And this is, I would say maybe even a 60-page document, and it's just all the benchmarks and recommended resources to start with. So it doesn't say like every resource for every little thing at every little part of the journey, but it just points to starting places for vetted resources that are useful at different parts of the curriculum. So that one is useful. It's a free document. You could go to Understand Native Minnesota. I also have a PDF sitting on my website. You're welcome to take anything that I'm pointing you to, and you can download copies, keep them for yourself, put them up on the district website, whatever is useful to make it easier for people to navigate to. That's not proprietary. And then they have an accompanying document around the essential understandings, which says, all right, we're trying to get people from point A to point B, and it's useful for educators too, not just to understand what to point the kids towards, but for any of us who feel like I got some gaps in my own stuff, it will be useful for identifying those things so we can work to fill them. And they've got links to the websites for all of the tribes and things like that, and it can be useful, especially for the like, what is sovereignty, how does it work kind of stuff. I think it's pretty helpful in that space. Also, the very best way to meet that mandate about Indigenous language and culture instruction is to get someone who's Indigenous, who knows something about Indigenous language and culture, and have them run with the kids. At the same time, we are at a point in time where the number of certified Native educators is very small, and the number of those who really have deep knowledge around Indigenous languages and cultures is really small. Like really, really small. Even the immersion schools are struggling to have enough certified staff to fill the positions to do all the work there. And there's a lot of movement in tribal space to do more programs, so tremendous demand out there. We worked to develop Rosetta Stone for Ojibwe, which is a really cool resource. So you might be familiar, like Duolingo, Babbel, Rosetta Stone. These are just different learning tools for languages. But as part of this effort, which by the way will push to an app on a computer or a phone, and people can work kind of at their own pace, there are a lot of other things that we can do. In some ways, I can't promise you like a silver bullet, one shot to fix it all, rather than here are some of the patches that may be useful as you build your own patchwork quilt. So yes, if you've got a motivated kid who wants to learn about language, like getting them the app can be great, or setting it up on a computer, in the media center can be helpful, but that is no substitute for a living, breathing human being working with them every day, right? So like, it's a patch and a patchwork quilt. Also, if you have someone on staff who like, this is their charge and they want to do stuff, then in addition to the app, there is a free 500-page educator guide for year 1 of Rosetta Stone. There's a free 500-page educator guide for year 2. There's a free 500-page educator guide for year 3, and we are in the midst of developing years 4, 5, and 6. So it is scoped, sequenced, tagged to everything that's in the module, so even if you have an educator who's not a fluent speaker of Ojibwe, they could guide kids through the unit, point to the fluent speakers who are in the app and the lessons that are being delivered there, and help deliver the scope and sequence, even if they're not content experts in all of the content. So that too is not a replacement for a living, breathing content expert, but it is another patch in a patchwork quilt that helps you get more stuff to the kids. In addition to that, I know my classes at Bemidji State University are taught HiFlex, meaning they're at set times, but they're offered both in person and by Zoom classroom. So we have had several high schoolers send PSEO students to take classes through that modality. Now, PSEO is really only eligible for juniors and seniors in good academic standing. That does not replace the mandate to like provide it for all the kids across the whole spectrum, but it's another patch and a patchwork quilt to help deliver some of the stuff on language and culture. And there are lots of other things that are out there too. There's much more to say about how we develop this and so forth. If you're curious, I'm happy to take you there, but it's been a pretty awesome endeavor. And some of the tribes like Mille Lacs has really been doing a lot in the education and health spaces. And it's a little bit of a sidebar, and I won't take you too deep into it, but they saved 50 cents out of every dollar since they opened the first casino in 1992. So their endowment now produces more money than all their casino operations combined. It's bigger than the Bush Foundation. And they funded this whole Rosetta Stone effort and lots of other educational efforts and initiatives. And so some of the tribes are starting to be really forward-looking partners to public schools, and it's pretty cool to see. Sometimes there's stuff in weird places. Minnesota Conservation Volunteer is not just pictures of pretty birds and trees and things like that, but they develop middle school curriculum. And a lot of it's around science, but they also have some other pieces. They did a good one on George Bonga, who was interesting. He said, "I am the first white man and the first black man west of the Mississippi." And although that wasn't the whole story or even a fully accurate statement, he was a multiracial, half black, half white man who married a native woman. The Bonga family's still a big family at Leech Lake today. And it was an interesting foray into a multiracial experience in the 1800s. And this guy also just had a like larger than life. And so it's pretty interesting for middle schoolers just to look at his story. I did a piece for them on Ojibwe Lifeways, harvest practices through the seasons, and kind of tagged to middle school science standards. And so there are lots of other things. The nice part about it is it's not just like an article in a magazine, but there's an educator guide, there are lesson plans, it's all tagged to the standards, easy to pick it up and start using. And you may have seen the traveling poster board exhibit, Why Treaties Matter. And if you haven't, there are a couple copies and it moves around the state. It's been in existence for several years now. But we started working on a series of lesson plans, and this is an emerging effort. We've got 16, and we need like 1,600 of these. But one of the nice things is it's developed by Ojibwe and Dakota educators. And by the way, like connecting with Native educators, period, is sometimes a challenge just because there aren't that many. But if you're trying to find Dakota educators, it is much more difficult than finding Ojibwe folks. And here in Alexandria, you're kind of right at the edge of Ojibwe Dakota territory, and we want to be responsive to the local geography and who's locally indigenous. And so you just got to imagine, like after 1862, I don't know if you're familiar with the U.S. Dakota War in 1862. If you aren't, then there's a good piece of history to do some studying on. There are at least 20 books from the Minnesota Historical Society on the topic and a couple of great documentaries, and it's worth the time to kind of build yourself up to feel confident in talking about that topic. But afterwards, you had the largest mass execution in U.S. history, which was the hanging in Mankato in 1862, and you had an order for the expulsion of the Dakota from the state of Minnesota. And as a result, there are Dakota people in Minnesota, but they number really in just a few thousand. And most of the Dakota who were from Minnesota moved to Manitoba, North Dakota, South Dakota, anywhere but here. So as a result, today, when you're looking at the few thousand Dakota people in the state of Minnesota, most of whom are kids, the number who are adults and educators and writing about this stuff is really small, and they're all pretty busy. So the nice part about this is you can have Ojibwe and Dakota authored curricular guidance about treaties and history and different things like that. It's an emerging effort. Like I said, there are only 16 of these lesson plans, but there are Ojibwe and Dakota folks saying, here's what sovereignty means to me, and here's what harvest practices are for me. And their units are kind of broken into different topics. So there are some on sovereignty and treaties, and there are also some kind of on more on the science side of the curriculum too. And again, we need tons more of that, but it's a start. And so you could Google why treaties matter, and I've got some of that stuff hyperlinked up on the website. So everything I'm showing you, you could one-stop shop